Okay, so today, I thought it would be a fun idea if we were to go ahead and rank each boss fight in LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga. Now there are 15 bosses total, however not all of those 15 bosses are unique characters, and there are a couple of bosses like this, where you face the same character twice in a couple of different levels. Jango Fett, for example, you'll see twice on this list, once for Camino, and once for the Geonosis Arena, but I'll make sure to make it obvious what level I'm on about. That said, let's get into it. Starting off at number 15, we have Zam Wesell. Now the Zam Wesell boss fight takes place at the end of episode 2 chapter 1, Bounty Hunter Pursuit. And the reason I've chosen to put this boss fight at number 15 is simply because it's very boring, in my opinion. There's not really a whole lot that happens. The level starts out with you chasing Zam Wesell around. There's a small green marker just over her head, showing what direction you should be going. And you essentially need to chase her around a bit. You'll then fly into these larger open areas that get walled off by electric barriers. Whilst in there, you need to shoot some turrets and use some torpedoes. And then eventually when you get to the end of the level, you'll get into the actual boss fight. Now this boss fight really isn't anything special at all. It's the only vehicle boss fight in the list. It's the only vehicle boss fight in the game, for that matter. And all you need to do is simply just shoot Zam Wesell. She'll fly around a bit. But the boss fight really isn't long, it's not complicated. Nothing really happens. The fight isn't split up into multiple phases, there's no attack patterns, literally nothing, it's just you fly around and shoot her, and then you finish the level. So it's really quite boring. Coming in at number 14, we have Boba Fett from Cloud City. Now this boss fight takes place at the start of episode 5 chapter 6, Betrayal over Bespin. Now upon spawning in, before the boss fight even starts, you have to chase Boba around a bit. He'll be standing on top of a staircase, which will then turn into a ramp before running away. To fix this, all you need to do is just pull a lever at the opposite end of the ramp, and it will turn it back into stairs so you can follow him. Once you follow him around a bit, you will actually get into the boss fight. Now this boss fight really isn't anything special at all. He'll just fly around and walk around a bit and start shooting you, until you eventually get him down to 1 heart, and he'll run away again. Just like before, you need to chase him. However, this time, he'll run away into a cutscene. And the cutscene shows him getting into Slave 1 and flying away. And that is the entire boss fight. The reason it's ranked at number 14 is because it's slightly more interesting than Zam Wesell. However, you never actually win. You don't defeat Boba, he just runs away. So it's kind of anticlimactic in that regard. Coming in at number 13, we have Boba Fett again. But this time from episode 6 chapter 2, the Great Pit of Carkoon. Now this fight is fairly similar to the previous one. Boba will fly around a bit, and then you just have to deflect some shots back at him and hit him, and then he'll die. So it really is a quick fight, and once again not really too interesting. It's just one of those types of boss fights that's just kind of there, partway through a level, and doesn't really do a whole lot. So yeah, overall once again, just a fairly boring boss fight. Coming in at number 12, we have the Imperial Spy. Now the Imperial Spy is fought at the end of episode 4 chapter 3, Mos Eisley Spaceport. Now what separates this fight from the ones that we've looked at so far? It's not just run around and attack the boss, which is definitely nice and makes a bit of a change. Now the way this fight works is that the Imperial Spy will use his walkie-talkie to call in some stormtroopers. You'll then have to kill all of the stormtroopers to make the Imperial Spy himself appear, and then you go and attack him. He'll then run behind some doors into cover. You'll then have to defeat some more stormtroopers, attack him again. He'll then run away again, call in even more stormtroopers, and then you simply have to repeat that a couple of times to eventually end the fight. Now for me, the thing I like about this fight is simply just the variation. The fact that you've got some stormtroopers to deal with, and the fact that the Imperial Spy is quite elusive. He'll run around and hide. In fact, when you get into the boss arena, you don't even know what's happening until you've defeated some stormtroopers. He doesn't even show himself until you've defeated the first wave. So you've got to get past that for the boss fight to even start. Also the fact that he changes elevation. He'll occasionally go up to a mezzanine platform, and he will occasionally go up to a mezzanine, and you have to get him down from there. Overall just a bit more interesting than Zam and Boba, because they were fairly standard, just run around and shoot them. I wouldn't say it's very challenging, but there's just a bit more going on with the different phases that make it a bit more enjoyable when compared to just press the attack button and shoot the boss, like with Zam and Boba. In at number 11, we have Jango Fett from Geonosis. Now the Jango Fett Geonosis boss fight happens right at the end of episode 2 chapter 4, Jedi Battle, and it's fairly similar to the Boba Fett boss fight, where he'll just fly around. There aren't really any phases, there isn't anything interesting that happens. The map's fairly big, and he does use most of it when flying around though. It's just slightly repetitive, and he's got a lot of HP as well. He has quite a few hearts for some reason. Taking into account the level he's in though, I mean, I really like the level. I think Jedi Battle's a cool level. There's lots going on, lots of action, lots of droids, and you've obviously got to rescue Anakin and Padme and Obi-Wan. So when you combine it all together, honestly not too bad. However, the Jango boss fight really isn't anything too special. And it does take quite a while, because like I said, for some reason he's got a lot of HP. Breaking into the top 10 now, we have Darth Vader from the Vision Cave in episode 5. Now this boss fight takes place partway through episode 5, chapter 4, Dagobah. And it's from the scene where Luke fights the vision of Darth Vader. Now this boss fight is pretty cool, because Vader will keep disappearing and reappearing in different locations, as well as a couple of force puzzles. In terms of actually fighting Vader himself, it's just the standard lightsaber type fighting. Now this is actually our first lightsaber fight on the list, and I'll use this time now to explain about lightsaber fights in LEGO Star Wars Complete Saga, because they follow a fairly standard pattern. Now the combat system has a couple of different moves. You've got a regular lightsaber swing, you've got a Jedi Slam attack where you jump once in an attack, and it will lunge forwards. And then you've got a Jedi Slam attack where if you double tap the jump button in an attack, you will slam into the ground, facing downwards. And then there is also the lesser known Unbreakable Block attack. If you swing your lightsaber, you'll notice that occasionally you'll get a load of sparks on a different animation. That is actually intentional, and there's a slow rhythm to the way you swing your lightsaber, and if you consistently swing it at the same speed every single time, you will end up performing an attack that cannot be blocked, which is quite cool. Now the sad part about this combat system is that it isn't really too relevant when you can simply just double jump and then attack, and that will go through any block and instantly do damage to any boss. So you kind of don't need any of the other methods, which is quite sad, because I do think it's quite cool having a few different techniques for attacking, but they're kind of redundant when you can do the Jedi Slam attack by double jumping. Anyway, that aside, Darth Vader will block things, and that is really about all he does himself. And then like I said earlier, you've got the bit where he'll teleport around. But yeah, not really a whole lot going on there in terms of lightsaber combat. Just the same as all of the other lightsaber fights in this game. Coming in at number 9, we have the Rancor from episode 6 chapter 1, Jabba's Palace. Now the Rancor boss fight is pretty cool, because it is a very large creature, and it's one of the two non-human like bosses in the game. The first one being Zam Wesell, which is a vehicle boss fight, and the second one being this Rancor, which is a creature boss fight. I mean, sure, you could argue General Grievous isn't a human, he's a cyborg. However, in terms of mechanics, his boss fight plays the same as any other lightsaber boss. That aside, the Rancor boss fight itself is pretty cool. And I remember as a kid really struggling with this one, because I always tried to crush the Rancor first time instantly, with the massive gate, like you see in episode 6. However, that isn't actually what you're supposed to do for the start of the fight. The gate only comes in at the very end. Throughout the level, there are these pipes that Gamorrean guards come out of, and you can pull a lever to seal them up and stop the guards from spawning. Now in the Rancor boss fight, you need to do the opposite of that. You need to use R2 or 3 to open them, to allow a Gamorrean guard to spawn. The Gamorrean guard will then run around for a bit and lure the Rancor over to some boxes. You then need to shoot the boxes, which will explode and cause the box to fall down, damaging the Rancor. You then need to repeat this process again for a second time. On the third time of spawning the Gamorrean guard, it will run over to the massive door, and then you and the second player need to pull the levers at the same time to cause the door to fall down and crush the Rancor. Overall a pretty good boss fight, and the Rancor being the size that he is makes this very interesting, because whenever he walks around the screen also shakes a lot, which is quite cool, adds to the tension. The only downside is that the rest of the level to get to the boss fight is quite long and fairly repetitive. You mainly just walk in a straight line through lots of different rooms. You've got a few things you've got outside with the gate. You've got the Gamorrean guards spawning. You've got a room where the Gamorrean guards start using their axes, their air guitars, with some music playing, which is quite funny. You've got to use Princess Leia's bush to open bounty hunter panels. However, outside of the boss fight, I really don't find the level that enjoyable. It's quite long as well. Now coming in at number 8, we have Count Dooku. This is actually the second Count Dooku boss fight in the game, from episode 3 chapter 2, Chancellor in Peril. This is also the last time you face him, because this is the level where he dies. As far as the actual boss fight goes, it's fairly standard for lightsaber combat. He starts attacking you, you can easily damage him by using the Jedi Slam attack. He'll jump around a bit and move to a mezzanine occasionally, where you have to fight some super battle droids, which is quite cool. They're not really too hard to defeat, but they definitely add something else to the boss fight. Additionally, Count Dooku will also use his Force Lightning to stun player 1. You will then have to switch to player 2 to attack him in the back, which will then release player 1, and then Count Dooku will run away somewhere, and you have to chase him and keep dealing damage that way. Now as a kid, much like the Rancor boss fight, I simply couldn't understand this bit, which when you think about it logically doesn't make any sense, given that he also uses this exact move in the first Count Dooku boss fight from episode 2. So I'm not really sure what happened there with 10-year-old me. And the rest of the level after the boss fight is also quite enjoyable, because you travel through the invisible hand, you've got the lift that falls on you. You've then got the really obscure smoke mechanic that R2-D2 can go through, and then you've got to fight Grievous and Magna Guards at the end of the level, which is quite cool. So overall a fairly solid level, and a fairly decent boss fight. It is quite short though, which might be the only issue. In at number 7, we have Jango Fett from Kamino. This is actually the first time in the game that you fight Jango Fett, from episode 2 chapter 2, Discovery on Kamino. This fight happens at the very end of the level, and Jango Fett himself works exactly the same as he does in the Geonosis boss fight we took a look at earlier. He'll fly around, he'll shoot rockets, he'll occasionally land and just shoot you normally. However, what makes this fight so interesting, and in my opinion better than the Geonosis one, is the addition of Boba in Slave 1 shooting at you. Now Slave 1 shoots for quite a while before stopping, and the shots that it shoots are quite big, so they add an additional obstacle for you to avoid. You can switch to R4 and activate some turrets to shoot at Slave 1, which will get it to fly away slightly and stop shooting for a bit. However, this isn't mandatory, and you don't actually have to do this to win the fight, it's just something you can do if you want to. So in that regard, I guess it kind of makes Slave 1 redundant, as you can just ignore it for most of the fight, as you can complete the fight without interacting with Slave 1. So I guess maybe something they could have done differently is made it so you have to get Slave 1 to stop shooting before you can attack Jango. That would have made Slave 1 feel a bit more part of the fight. As the way the fight is set up, Slave 1's more of just an obstacle you have to avoid sometimes. Other than that, the rest of the level, Discovery on Kamino, is quite cool. Because if you've watched me for quite a while, you know that I really like Kamino as a planet, and I think Kamino in video games is portrayed very well, and the atmosphere is always on point. You mainly run around the halls of Kamino, until you meet Jango Fett for the first time, who will then run away and reveal that, oh, he's a bounty hunter, he's bad, and you have to chase him through some corridors. He'll also put down a load of mines that you have to avoid that will explode a bridge, creating a small parkour section, before running into some more corridors where you have to face these weird droids. I don't really know what these are, and I don't think they're meant to represent anything in Star Wars specifically. They're just more of a custom level object. Still quite interesting though, and then eventually it gets to the fight, which works as I just explained. Overall, pretty cool fight, however I feel like Slave 1 could have been utilized slightly better. Coming in at number 6, we have Count Dooku, from episode 2 chapter 6, Count Dooku. This is the first Count Dooku boss fight in the game, and it's actually the first level on this list that we take a look at that is entirely themed around the boss fight. The entire level from start to finish is based around fighting Count Dooku. When you spawn in, you have to chase Dooku into the hangar. A load of Geonosians and droids will come out and start attacking you, which you'll need to defeat before entering a small room with a puzzle. This is a fairly easy puzzle, just involving some parkour jumping on switches, to then pull down some levers to open the main door into the Count Dooku boss fight arena. As always, the lightsaber combat is the same as every other lightsaber fight. Jedi Slam Attack is obviously the best move, and Count Dooku will try and block, and he'll walk away sometimes, and then attack you, and then block again. Much like the fight we looked at before, on the Invisible Hand, he'll also use his lightning, which is the exact same mechanic as the Invisible Hand, where you need to switch to player 2 to then attack him in the back. What's different about this one though, is that occasionally he'll retreat into the back of the hangar, have a kind of force field like thing around him, which is more of just a gameplay indicator to the player that you're not really supposed to get near him, as he'll then start to throw objects at you using the force, which you need to force back him to damage him. You'll then get to the midpoint in the fight, where Anakin and Obi-Wan will be defeated. Anakin will get his hand cut off like you see in the film, and then Yoda will come in. Obi-Wan will suddenly get back up, which you could argue isn't canonically accurate, however, once again gameplay, you need two characters, so Obi-Wan makes sense. You can actually go and see Anakin with his hand cut off, sitting in the corner, which is quite cool. Nice little detail. Anyway, this is where Dooku will actually start using his lightning. He'll got the same shield mechanic where you can't go near him, and then he'll electrocute player 1. It's basically the same mechanic as the fight we looked at earlier, just with a shield for some reason, meaning you can't get near him. Overall though, pretty good level. It's nice you get to play as Yoda and Anakin and Obi-Wan. You get to play as all of them. And like I said, the small detail of seeing Anakin with his hand cut off. It's quite cool. In at number 5, we have Darth Vader from Episode 5, Chapter 5, Cloud City Trap. This level, just like the Count Dooku level we've just looked at, is entirely themed around the boss fight, and you'll notice that that's a fairly common theme with the levels we have left now. In total, you fight Darth Vader 4 individual times in this level, with a couple of traversal sections in between, just moving between the different fight stages. When you spawn in, you buy Luke's X-Wing, and you have to raise a bridge to get over to a turret to destroy a door to enter the carbon freezing chamber. This is where the first Vader boss fight is, and it involves using R2-D2 to activate the carbon freezing chamber jets to damage Vader, which will then make him cough a bit and jump around to a place where you can actually attack him. Now, a common theme for this level is using your surroundings to get Darth Vader to a point where you can actually attack him, either by making him jump down to something, jump down to where you are, or moving something out of the way to actually be able to attack him with your lightsaber. Once you've beaten Vader in the carbon freezing chamber, he will run away through a door that you have to use a stormtrooper helmet to get to. This involves using R2 to activate another bridge to jump across through the door to open it once you're wearing a stormtrooper helmet. Then you've got a short walk outside before entering the second Darth Vader boss fight stage. This one once again uses jets of steam to damage him, to make him jump down off of a platform to attack you. This section involves using the Force to build a ramp for R2 to get up to a panel, and then building a winder, which is the grain of everything you push around, to allow R2 to get to another panel to activate the jets of steam. Now, I'd say this room is probably the least interesting of the rooms, because the carbon freezing chamber is an iconic location, and the fight is pretty good. However, this room is simply just alternating between 2 different panels for R2 to use. Anyway, once you finish that room, you go into the large room with the massive viewport. You have to once again use R2 to fly across a gap to activate some panels to kill some stormtroopers that are guarding Vader. Once Vader's guards have been defeated, he will use the Force to throw objects at you, which you will then need to use the Force yourself to throw them back at Vader. Once they hit Vader, he will jump across to where you are, and you can damage him. Once you've taken down all of his hearts, he will jump through the massive viewport. Once you've taken down all of his hearts, he will break the massive viewport and jump through it to the final part of the level. This final part takes place outside, and is a mixture of parkour and lightsaber fighting. You've got a bit of platforming to do involving Luke and R2, and activating some panels as R2 to allow Luke to jump across to areas that he can't normally jump over to. And then finally, you get to the weather vane, which is the thing that Luke clings onto at the end of the fight. And you have to fight Vader a bit more before ending the level and getting the cutscene, where Vader pulls out the photo of Padme and Anakin to show that he is in fact Luke's father. Overall, a really good level. I like the fact that the boss fight runs through the entire thing, with a bit of parkour in the middle, because LEGO game parkour is always fun. In at number 4, we have General Grievous. Now you have to fight General Grievous in Episode 3, Chapter 3, General Grievous. So once again, it's another level themed entirely around the boss fight. Now you spawn in as Obi-Wan and Commander Cody on this massive circular platform, and after playing an in-game cutscene, Grievous will jump down to you. Now this platform acts as the kind of central point for the fight. Essentially what will happen is you will damage Grievous for a bit. He will then jump away to somewhere else with some explosive barrels next to him. You will then need to switch to Cody and shoot the barrels, which will cause him to jump back into the massive platform and start fighting you again. And this is basically the main fight pattern. You'll do some more damage, he will then jump somewhere slightly higher up. You'll need to give chase to him. Now most of this section involves using the Force of Obi-Wan to build things to allow Cody to follow you and keep shooting up the barrels next to Grievous. Once you've shot the second set, just like before, Grievous will jump back into the middle, and you have to do some more damage to him using the lightsaber. For the final time, Grievous will run away, up to some even higher ground, and you actually have to use the Force to force one of the explosive barrels over to him, and then shoot it as Cody, which will mean Grievous goes back to the central platform for the last time, allowing you to end the fight and end the level. It's a fairly simple boss fight, however I think Grievous is animated really well in this game. Some of his animations compared to the other characters are quite crazy and intense, because he's got 4 arms, 4 lightsabers, he spins around a lot. The actual level itself is quite cool. It's a fairly small area, however it's got some nice details, especially the red brick which is in the room where Palpatine and Grievous talk in Episode 3. You can actually get up there, go along the bridge that Grievous jumps off of at the start, and into the room. And you've got a whole puzzle section there to solve to get the red brick. Overall, just a nice boss fight. It's quite short, but I enjoy it. Coming in at number 3, we have Darth Maul, from Episode 1, Chapter 6, Darth Maul. Darth Maul is once again a level that's predominantly a boss fight. Now when you spawn in, there's a chasm opposite you, with Darth Maul on the other side of it, alongside loads of droids. You have to deflect the shots back at the droids before Darth Maul will jump around and start throwing objects at you using the Force. You will then need to use the Force to deflect them back at Darth Maul, damaging him. More droids will appear. You do the same thing, deflect the shots back at them. Force objects back at Darth Maul for a couple of times, and then Darth Maul will run away, and you'll have to use the Force to build a bridge. Now this is slightly canonically inaccurate and doesn't happen in the film, however it's pretty cool for a gameplay point of view, because you've got the massive chasm in front of you, and you can see the rest of the hangar behind you. Once Maul has run away, you can either choose to look around the hangar, while there are mostly things that you need to be in free play to do, or you can give chase to Maul, which will lead you into the level's second room. This level is mainly parkour orientated, and there are a couple of different times that you have to use the Force to hold panels out for the second player to jump across. You will then use the Force to hold the same panel so you can jump across to where they are. Once you finish this room, you'll get to the massive plasma refinery, with the beams coming down from the ceiling. Now this room is pretty cool, and it's very big. The whole idea here is that there are 2 commander droids at each end of the room, and they will constantly keep on spawning regular B1 battle droids down. Now the droids drop down in crates and will basically just kind of converge and attack you at the same time, which can get quite chaotic. Once you've taken out the commanders, the B1 droids will stop spawning, and 2 platforms will rise up. Each platform will have a button and a droidica on it. You take out each droidica, and then stand on the buttons at the same time, and then you'll be able to give chase to Maul in the final section of the level, which is the long corridor with the red shields. Now in the film, this is the bit that separates Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. However, this is a LEGO game, and there needs to be 2 characters. However, once all of these shields have been disabled, you will open up into the room with the massive hole. This is the final area of the level, and is the main fight with Darth Maul. The first bit of the fight involves typical lightsaber combat, however after a while, Maul will build some platforms using the Force and jump on top of them. He'll then use the Force again to throw objects at you, which you simply need to deflect back him using the Force yourself. He'll do this a few times before returning to the floor to fight you again, before you kill him to end the level. Overall, pretty good boss fight. I like it from start to finish, and obviously you've got Duel of the Fates playing in the background, which is a very good soundtrack. Most of the rooms in the level are quite large. You've got the hangar at the start and the plasma refinery, which are, quite big rooms. So yeah, overall, good boss fight. I like it. Coming in at number 2, we have Anakin Skywalker from Episode 3, Chapter 6, Darth Vader. Now this boss, in terms of actual combat, is fairly standard lightsaber combat. You're on the high ground, and the high ground will slowly over time disappear and sink into the lava, which adds a bit more tension to the fight. However, the interesting part of the fight is the game mechanics around it, because you can have Anakin as the boss. However, if you're in the story mode and you switch to Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan then becomes the boss. So technically you've got 2 different characters, and based on who you actually defeat, you've got a different cutscene at the end. Additionally, if you're playing in 2-player mode, the second player becomes the boss, which I think is a really cool concept. Adds a bit of PvP into LEGO Star Wars if you're playing with a friend. As for the actual level, it builds up to the fight at the end. You start off having to do some parkour with the floor sinking into lava. You then make your way into the control room where Anakin kills all of these separatist leaders. There's a timer, and you have to open the door by moving pillars out of the way using the Force before the timer expires. Otherwise the building will explode and collapse, and you will die, restarting the section. Then you've got a small Force puzzle outside, before continuing on with some jumps. You've got some single jumps, and then you've got some double jumps over lava, before getting to the actual final fight. The reason this fight is number 2 though, is simply because of the mechanics and the fact that you can either have Anakin or Obi-Wan or the second player as the boss. So you've kind of got a couple of different choices with who you want to fight. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have the Emperor from Episode 6, Chapter 5, Jedi Destiny. Now I remember as a child loading up this level before I had to go to sleep, and being in shock by the sheer amount of health that Palpatine has, because no other character in the game has 2 rows of hearts. The sad part about that though, was that I had to wait until the next day to play because I had to go to sleep and then go to school and then get home from school and then figure out how to beat Palpatine and then actually go ahead and do that. Anyway, the overall fight is split up into multiple different sections. You've got some lightsaber dueling, you've got some force lightning parkour, I guess you'd call it, and the entirety of the levels used are in the Death Star throne room. You're in the throne room of the Death Star 2, and the entire area of the level is used. You also play as Luke and Vader, and you get given Vader after finishing the level, which is quite cool. Anyway, the fight starts off in front of the throne, and Palpatine will just use some basic lightsaber combat. Once you've gotten his hearts down to it, he will run away, and you will then have to play as Vader using the dark side of the Force to build a fan to get up to where Palpatine is. Palpatine will then electrocute the floor, and you have to time your movements carefully so you don't get electrocuted yourself to get over to him and damage him some more. He will then stop targeting the floor and target you instead. Now this works exactly the same way as Count Dooku, where you need to switch to player 2 to damage Palpatine in order for him to release player 1. He will then start running away again, and some Imperial Guards will come out just to kind of distract you, which, pretty cool seeing the Imperial Guards. Interesting enemies, I'd say. Once you've caught up to Palpatine, you then need to do a bit more lightsaber fighting, where in order to follow him, you will need to build a lift and then use the Force to make the lift go upwards to where he is. He will then jump over something again, and you'll have to use Vader or Luke to double jump over to where he is, do some more damage. He'll then jump down to the floor for the final time, which will do even more damage to him, and then end the level. And then you get the cutscene where Vader throws Palpatine down into the shaft, and then Vader dies, very sadly. Once again, said this before, but the cutscene is incredibly emotional, given that there's no actual physical dialogue spoken, it's just body movement and facial actions. Which, given that they're LEGO figures, and I think TT do a good job of mixing in humour and emotion, because when Luke walks away, Vader kind of slides down into the Imperial shuttle. So yeah, that is, in my opinion, the best boss fight in the game. All 15 bosses ranked. If you've enjoyed this ranking video, the video on screen now is another ranking video where we go over all 36 main storyline levels, which I'm sure if you enjoyed this video, you'll like that one too. Either way, yes, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you all later.